So what we're going to look at today is VFD tubes. You've seen me use those in another video. Those are IV25. They're supposed to go in the matrix. We have a couple of those next to each other, and then you can actually display text or numbers or whatever you want. I think at one time the most common type of VFD was, I actually have tons of different tubes, was this style. So very reminiscent of the vacuum tube era. Those are all Russian ones. Also come in different sizes. And they just have a 7-segment display on there, which basically works just like those work, but with an additional grid. Those work, they have a filament up here, which is always a bit hard to see on camera, and they have anodes down here. And basically, you put high voltage, well, high-ish voltage, like around 30 volts, on the anodes, and then you're going to attract the electrons that are emitting from the glowing cathode, and then those are going to light up because they go to a phosphor that reacts to that. I think it's some sort of zinc compound. I think zinc sulfide probably. Those work a bit different. They have an additional grid. I think that's actually somewhat, well, on these you can actually see the grid. They're just above the ceramic carrier. Yeah, it's a bit hard to see. Those actually have a grid, and the grid is important because you can basically do multiplexing with those, where you would, for example, write out to the segments you want. Like I want to have a free, so I'm going to turn on all these segments. And then I decide on which of the tubes that I have next to each other. I have like 5 of them next to each other. I decide by pulling the grid positive, and that's going to let the electrons through. And that's basically just how a directly heated triode functions. I mean, that's just it. Yeah, they come in, those come in various styles. With these you can actually see the filament that's there. It's the filament structure. But today more commonly are these kind of VFDs, where it's just one sort of sandwich glass block with an evacuation nipple at the back. This is made by Futaba. A lot of them these days are made by Noritake. NEC also made them for a while. Those have multiple segments, multiple different sort of things in there. Multiple segments, 1, 2, 3, 4, and the 7-segment display. And what you can see is they have grids here, 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 that you can multiplex them. And they all come in one package, which is kind of nice. Yeah, those are very common, and I have many different VFDs like this. What I also have is matrix VFDs, where you basically like a dot matrix behind the grid, and then you can sort of write whatever character you want. You're not limited to the 7 segments, which is nice because you can put text on them. Although to drive them is a bit, yeah, it's very complicated and there's a lot of labor involved. But we're not going to talk about using them as displays today. What we're going to talk about is alternative uses, and that it has to do with them being very similar to a directly heated triode that I spoke earlier of. And there's actually someone who's doing this professionally. Korg sells the new tube, which is just a very, very, very expensive VFD. I think they buy them from Noritake. So what I also have is I have a box of 15 of those, which they come out of, I think, old VHS machines. And I've got them new in the box, and I have basically no use for them because I have, first of all, I have much nicer VFDs if I want to display something. Second of all, they come with a ton of text on here that I'm never going to use. week and AM, PM and memo and whatever. I'm not going to ever use those, and I have many of them. So I thought I'd experiment a bit, and what I did is I tied all the grids together, and actually these down here are the grids. You know, because you can look in here and you can see there's connections to the grid. They go down like this, and you can actually see them coming out here. And I tied all the grids together. I tied all the segments together, and I left open the filament windings, the filament connections here and here. And so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to connect those up to a power supply, and we're going to record a characteristic curve for those so that we can actually, maybe in another video, design a circuit where we're actually going to use this as a triode amplifier, which would be swell because you could actually use this as a triode that works, I think, probably reasonably well at 30 volts, which is great. So yeah, we're going to do that. So I've got it all hooked up now. There's a bit of a tangle of wires. This is the filament connection. You can see I'm driving these way too hard. I'm driving them at 6 volts. Maybe we'll just put a resistor in series with that. It's probably a bit better. Is this still glowing? Yeah. We'll see. And then I've got an amp meter connected with 26 volts from here to the clustered anodes. And I've got minus 12 volts at the grid at the moment. So, and you can see it's completely cut off. I'm also going to just grab a sheet of paper to write that down. And I'm going to do it in 1 volt steps, and then I'm going to probably just put a linear curve through that later on, or non-linear curve, depending on what we get. So at minus 12 volts, there is 0 milliamps. Now I'm going to go up to 11 volts. Still nothing. And you would expect that those tubes, they cut off fairly at fairly high voltages, because they're actually meant to be used with positive voltages on the grid, which I guess then the grid just works more like an acceleration grid in a pentode than anything else. We're at minus 8 volts now, and there's still nothing. Minus 7. Maybe the filament is just not hot enough with the 22 ohm resistor in there. We'll see when we arrive at 0 volts. Because at 0 volts there should definitely be something. Minus 5 volts now. And there's still nothing. Just thought oh, there we go. Yeah, I'm not picking up anything on the amp meter yet. So I'm going to write down another 0. Now we're going to minus 2 volts. It's definitely waking up now. And we've got 0.1 milliamp. And minus 1 volt. 0.5. No, 0.3. And then add 0 volts. We've got 5 milliamps. 0.5. which is not great. I think we're also going to measure into the positive range. So I'm just going to swap the polarity here. And we're going to go up to positive 1 volt. Yeah, now it's really waking up. It's 1.2 milliamps. And it's got to be said that if you look at the datasheet, you can actually drive the grid fairly hard. Thing you're not supposed to do is 2 volts now. Is to drive the. I mean, you can actually drive the grid very hard. You're not supposed to drive the filament very hard. But I just brushed all concerns aside because I don't care if those burn out in, well, 100 hours or 5,000 hours. I've got so many of them. So at 3 volts we have 3.5 milliamps. Oh, it actually did go down 3.2 milliamps. 4. And you can see it's fairly bright now. 4 volts, we have 4.4 milliamps. And we've got 5 volts with 5.7 milliamps. And 6 volts, we've got 7.6. And 7 volts at 9.7 milliamps. Now with 26 volts at 10 milliamps, you could actually do something. I mean, this is getting into a range where it's very usable. So 8 volts now, 11.5 milliamps, and 13 milliamps at 9 volts. But you could see earlier that this part of the display was lighting up, but not this part. It's actually due to me using not using a center tap on the filament voltage, which you should do. And if I design something using this, I will definitely do that. Because then you're actually using it symmetrically. So we're at plus 10 volts now on the grid, and we've got 16 milliamps. And 2 more steps. We've got 11 volts and 18.8 milliamps. And finally on 12 volts, and we've got a whopping 20 milliamps. Which, yeah, the grid voltage is half that of the anode, but yeah, still, this is very bright now. Yeah, I think I'll actually design something with this someday. One thing I want to test, what if I just heat the filament up to the point where I had it before. Oh, there's actually not much to be gained. So you could actually run it, you definitely can run it cooler, you don't get much out of it. And that would get more lifetime. Yeah, that's great. Going to run it cooler then. It's also interesting with these VFDs, if you disconnect the filament, you can actually see it takes a while till it cools down. Yeah, I think this concludes this video.